Welcome back to the Speak Up for Blue podcast, everybody. It is Interview Wednesdays, and we've got a great guest on today, Dr. Asha de Vos, who is, I'd like to say, a friend of mine, a colleague, a fantastic scientist. She's a marine mammologist, and she studies blue whale populations. She actually discovered a very unique blue whale population, which stays in and feeds and breeds within the northern Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka, her home country. And she brings us with some great news. She's starting a nonprofit organization called Oceanswell, and this is huge, people. What she's planning on doing is huge. I'm going to let her talk about it. But after the interview, I know you guys are going to want to talk about it. You guys are going to ask questions. You're going to have some concerns, or not concerns, but you're going to ask questions. You're going to be like, hey, this is amazing. She's going to be in the group. If you have any questions for her, it'll be awesome. So go to speakupforblue.com/group to be in our Facebook group, where you can discuss anything on this podcast or any other podcast you want. You want me to cover a certain story on a podcast, or you want to hear my opinion on it, or other people's opinion within the group, you can do so. Go to speakupforblue.com/group. Just all you have to do is just request to join with your Facebook account, and I will let you in after I do a quick check to make sure you're not a spammer. And and then we have just introduce yourself. There's some questions I'm going to ask you as you request to join, so we can get to know you a little bit better, and that will be fantastic. So here we go. Let's start the show. If you are sick of hearing of the doom and gloom of the ocean and not knowing what to do, you're in the right place. If you want to meet people working to protect the ocean, then you are in the right place. If you want to find out how you can get involved in protecting the ocean, then you are in the right place. This is the Speak Up for Blue podcast, and I am here to empower you to live for a better ocean. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, founder of SpeakUpForBlue.com, marine ecologist, and self-proclaimed oceanpreneur. And I am so happy. This is Interview Wednesdays, and I have my good friend and fellow marine ecologist. She's a marine mammologist. She's amazing. This is Dr. Asha de Vos, and she's on the show today. And I am happy. I am so happy to have her on. We've had her on before. If you guys remember, for the longtime listeners, around this time last August, just maybe a little bit before, we had Dr. Asha de Vos on, giving her. It was a bit of a different kind of interview. Nate Johnson, who is one of our podcasters here at Speak Up for Blue, he interviewed Asha de Vos, and Asha was awesome in that. She talked about what she does. It was a bit of a collaboration with another group at the International Marine Conservation Congress in St. John's, Newfoundland. So we had a bit of a different take on our interview that day, which was fantastic. I always love experimenting with the different formats of the show. And Asha brought it, and she brought it this time too. She talked about sort of what she discovered, the blue whale population, how she feels every time she sees a whale. Her discovery of a new whale in the northern Indian Ocean, which hadn't been seen before, and she wrote a paper on that recently. We discussed that. We discussed especially her new organization, Oceanswell, and I can't wait for this thing. It started. It's 3 weeks into the making, and it started. The website's coming. It's going to be great. It's got a Facebook page. It's got a Twitter account. It's got a YouTube channel. It's going to be fantastic. So we're going to get all into that right now. I'm not going to leave you with anything more except for letting you know that we have a Patreon campaign. This Patreon campaign is to help us run our citizen scientist program, which it's in development right now. If you want to find out more about that, you can become a contributor, because I do post just for contributors on everything that's happening. And I think there's going to be a post up today. So what this is, it's a crowdfunding site. It's basically to support the mission of Speak Up for Blue. It's to essentially provide support for people who are doing citizen science. So these are for citizen scientists who are trying to get into citizen science, who are going on these trips or doing these programs and want to share their experiences, want to ask questions, want to meet the people in the programs. We're going to give information for everybody. It's going to be amazing. I'm hoping to launch by the end of December, and I am looking forward to this. So if you want to contribute to that, you can go to speakupforblue.com/Patreon, Patreon, and just become a contributor. It'd be really great. It supports the podcast. It supports our mission. And I'm looking forward to having you guys in there. Comment on it. You guys get to, if you're a contributor, you get to, comment on everything you got. Like, it's going to be amazing. You guys get to help mold the program, which is nice, because I like to hear different feedback from people and stuff. So it'll be really great to have you guys do that. And so, yeah, go to speakupforblue.com/Patreon, Patreon. Here is Asha de Vos talking about Oceanswell and all her blue whale and whale magic that she does. It's science, people. It's not magic. It's science. But yeah, I'm looking forward to you guys hearing this, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Asha, welcome to the Speak Up for Blue podcast. Are you ready to dive in and talk about some ocean conservation?
Absolutely. I'm so stoked to be here, and thank you for having me on.
You bet. It's funny. It's been about, I guess, a month and a half, or actually more than that, or two, maybe 3 months since we've seen each other last. You were down in Toronto to do a presentation on blue whales at the Royal Ontario Museum, which was fantastic, by the way. Is actually the first time I've actually seen you present, because I missed last year's presentation at IMCC, so I was really excited to see that. We got to hang out for a bit. That was a lot of fun, considering we live on sort of opposite sides of the world on a regular basis, so it's always nice to see each other when we get to see each other at a conference or a talk.
Absolutely.
But today we're going to talk about your efforts in marine conservation and successful efforts and your future in marine conservation as you start a nonprofit organization. We're going to get all into that and sort of what got you into ocean conservation and where you're going to go from there. So I'm really, really excited. But first, why don't you tell everybody, if they haven't listened to the episode last year when you were on for a little bit, why don't you remind people of who you are and what you do?
Okay, perfect. So my name is Asha de Vos, and I'm actually a marine biologist and ocean educator and a National Geographic explorer from Sri Lanka. And that actually, while you might think it seems like a commonplace job in this country, being a beautiful tropical paradise island, it's actually extremely rare to be a marine biologist. So I'm one of a handful of people who actually work for the oceans out here in Sri Lanka. So my thing is, like, I have pioneered blue whale research in the Northern Indian Ocean over the last decade or so. And that's sort of kind of been my thing for a long time, working to discover this population of blue whales that no one had ever really done any work on, that lives in our waters. That's also the only non-migratory population of blue whales in the world, that have these different behavioral adaptations and do these cool things out here, different vocal calls, etc., but also unfortunately are threatened, and therefore, I work towards understanding them so I can actually protect them better.
That's amazing. It's amazing when you at your presentation, when you started to say that you discovered this unique blue whale population that's sort of in Northern Indian Ocean, and you're just like, what are the odds of that? Like, what are the chances of that happening? Like, in your sort of, like, I guess it's in your backyard, really, in your ocean. You start to discover this, and all of a sudden you discover these species, and you get to know these species. And it's been 10 years. When you've seen blue whales quite a bit, does the excitement of seeing a blue whale, does it dissipate? Do you just stop being like, you're like, oh, okay, there's another one, or here's another one? Do you still get excited? Do you still get that excitable feeling that everybody gets when they see a whale?
Absolutely. I guess I'm very excitable by nature, which is kind of purple, but I get super stoked. And, I've been on whale watch boats where I've been the most excited person on the boat, actually all over the world with any species of whale or whatever. And I've had tourists come up to me and be like, is this your first whale? And I'm like, actually, this is what I do for a living. And they're just really confused about it. But, to me, the fact is, you're seeing, one thing is, especially when you're with a blue whale, you think you're side by side with the largest animal that's ever lived on the planet, right? We have this privilege of living at the same time as this creature, right? Which I think is incredible.
Yeah.
And they're just the giant, but we know next to nothing about this species. And that alone is, it's baffling. It's like, how on earth do we not know? And if we don't know, about them at, the sizes that they get to, 80, 100 feet, whatever, if they can grow that big and we still know nothing about them, imagine all the other stuff that's out there. So it's very symbolic as well, because there's all this other stuff that we don't know and all these other species that we don't protect because we just overlook them. And to me, I just find, that the fact that the ocean is this mysterious place, is this place that has these hidden secrets, I find that like truly magical and truly, it really draws me in. And I think that's where my kind of childlike excitement really comes from.
That's amazing. And I think everybody as a marine biologist gets that as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that if I see something if I go to an aquarium, especially when you see something in the wild and you actually see, and it's something like you said, something as majestic as a blue whale, like the largest animal on the planet, and you see that, and you're in your boat, and it's dwarfing your boat because it's so large. You're just like, oh wow, and you're side by side with this thing, and it's not going to hurt you, and you're just like, this is amazing. Like this is the thing. I feel like it's a marine biologist thing where we get to act like that all the time because it's fun. That's why we go into this type of
exactly. Right? And that's what I always say is it's cool because we're nerds and it's cool, and that's the point. That's exactly it also removes the stigma of what a nerd is, or that it's uncool to be a nerd. I think it's so cool to nerd out about these things and just really be excited and want to know more and want to learn more and want to go into science and want to like delve into the secrets and want to protect. And we just have that special privilege, I guess. And
absolutely.
It's super awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, and if you think about it too, just as you were mentioning that, everybody, when people go on, like the reason why people go on whale watching boats is to nerd out because they get the same feeling when they see a whale, right? So everybody, we nerd out maybe on a different level because we're looking for specific information, and we'll also nerd out when we see relationships and things that we hypothesize about. But when people go out and they see a whale for the first time, I mean, it's an amazing. They get that same experience, and they sort of nerd out, being like, "Oh my god, that's the thing I came out to see, and I saw it." And I think that is a privilege, definitely, that we get to take on that note. But one thing you mentioned in your introduction was you want to protect them because there's threats to them. I often come across a lot of people when we talk about whales and we talk about protecting whales, because a lot of whales have been protected in the past just because of hunting historically, right? And there's a lot of threats to whales now. But a lot of the questions that I get is, why are they important? What do they provide? Like we hear, when we talk about protecting an animal that's majestic like a shark, we talk about they're an apex predator, or like a marine mammal like sea lions or seals. They're apex predators. Marine mammal, like a whale, is a little bit different. How does it actually contribute to the ocean in a way that, like, if they disappear, that the ocean would miss out on?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, and I think it's something that's really important to focus on. Some people look at me and assume that I work to protect these species because they're beautiful and charismatic, and I'm not going to take away from the fact that they are beautiful and charismatic and pretty magical, but there is also this real need to protect them for the sake of protecting ourselves. So essentially, whales, they dive to the depths of our oceans to feed. And in those areas, there are these nutrients that are completely, limiting or non-existent in the surface waters. So these whales go down to the depths, they take, big mouthfuls, fill their bellies, and then they come back up to breathe. And as we all know, because they're marine mammals, like all mammals, they have to come up to the surface to breathe. And when they do that, when they come up to the surface, that's when they poop. And when they poop, they release these incredible plumes of, fecal matter or poo, and it's a fertilizer. So now they brought these nutrients that were only in the depths of the ocean to the surface and then released them. And then there's these tiny microscopic plants called phytoplankton that sort of lurk at the surface that need fertilizer, like plants in our gardens. They need sort of nutrients to grow. And the nutrients are available in the whale poop. So then the phytoplankton start to, do their thing. They produce oxygen. 50 to 70% of the oxygen that we breathe is actually produced in the ocean. So, produced by phytoplankton and other species like that. And also phytoplankton is the base of every marine food web. So the more phytoplankton we have, the more, fish you'll have, and the more fish you have, the more sharks you can have. So there are knock-on effects as well like that. So they're really important in terms of their poop, but at the same time, they're also important. Their carcasses are really important. So when whales die, their carcasses will slowly sink to the bottom of the ocean. And we actually call that, there's a technical term, it's called whale fall. And as they sink to the bottom of the ocean, they provide food for, species, not only at the surface, but at different levels of the water column. And then they sink down to these depths of the ocean where there's actually very little food. And there are species in those places like hagfish that are basically waiting for these meals to basically drop from the surface. And, so they can feed. So they are providing a service in that sense. But also these whale carcasses, from the surface, they tend to absorb some excess carbon. And as they sink, they take that carbon away from the surface, from the air, down into the depths of the ocean, into what we call a carbon sink. The sea is a carbon sink because it stores a lot of the excess carbon from our environment that we have been producing. And the ocean is doing us this giant favor at the moment by holding this extra carbon back, which means that, it helps for us to mitigate climate change as well. So whales are incredibly important. And if you want to, if you don't care about whales, that's one thing, but we should be protecting them at least for ourselves, for our own survival, for our own ability to breathe.
That's right. And one of the great things about phytoplankton that we discovered is they do absorb carbon dioxide. And from a climate change perspective, that's a huge thing, especially these days.
Exactly.
So it's good to go over that, because I find that a lot of people are like, oh, whales are nice to see, but if they're gone, like it'll suck, but what's the big deal? And I always say there's a function to that, and I think it's important for people to understand that. Now, in Sri Lankan waters, I guess it's Northern Indian Ocean, right? That's sort of
exactly.
What were the major threats to when you discovered blue whales in there, and you discovered it's a unique population where they don't migrate north? What did you discover that was their major threat when you first started to understand these animals?
Yeah, so these whales are very unique. So just like you said, they don't migrate. And it's not just north. They can't go north because the Indian subcontinent is up north. And they don't actually choose to go south either. So they tend to do these tiny migrations, seen sometimes off the coast of Oman, down to the Maldives, and the east coast of Sri Lanka is the easternmost extent of their range. Now, these are gigantic animals that, you think about it, 70% of our planet is ocean. So it's baffling to think that they have learned to restrict themselves to this tiny area, right? So the thing is, this area also has a lot of different threats. And the biggest threat that they face in these waters is actually ship strike or death by getting hit by ships. And if you, go on Google, just Google, a map of shipping routes, you'll see that the south coast of Sri Lanka is actually home to one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. It's the main artery for any traffic going through the Northern Indian Ocean or the Indian Ocean in general. And everything from, Singapore to Dubai, you think of these big economies, these big countries that are transporting things constantly. That stuff goes right through our waters and very close to shore. If I go stand on the south coast of Sri Lanka, I can see the ships, these gigantic vessels just going left and right, basically east and west. And so as a result, and we've seen that the areas where the shipping lanes are also where the whales tend to hang out. Now, the whales are hanging out because that's where they feed. And so it really is like, if you're hanging out in the kitchen and someone tries to chase you out, you'll die of starvation. So the point is, what I've been trying to do over the last few years, try to figure out, okay, what can we do? How can we reduce this threat to these whales while also not, trying to have negative impacts on the shipping industry? And the key thing I would say about the shipping industry is that we're all to blame because ship strike is all of our fault. I mean, if you look at yourself right now as you're listening to this podcast, you will notice that you're wearing at least one piece of clothing or one item, or the cloth that your dress was made from is from a country across the world. And how does it get to your shores? In a ship. 90% of everything is shipped, right? So in that case, we all have a responsibility to think about how we can protect these animals, how we can be part of the solution and not just part of the problem. And this is something I've been sort of driving in our waters for the last, few years.
Yeah, and it's an interesting aspect, because as you were saying that, I was just thinking about the problem that we've been having, and I'm sure you've heard about it here in Canada, about the right whales that have moved in again back into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is a great thing because they're moving back in. However, there have been some ship strikes and some fish entanglements or fishing net entanglements, and that's been a huge issue. And recently, the government came out, and so that the problem was, well, what they thought the problem was is the boats were moving too fast through this area. So that they were moving at 20 knots. The government made them reduce their speed to 10 knots, so they hopefully will be able to have more time to react if they see a right whale. And that created actually the company that's sort of in charge of those boats bringing groceries to like Newfoundland.
Right.
Basically put a surtax to make up for their time. Is that sort of the solution that you had when, or that was the result of the work that you did working with the government to get that? Was it more of a speed reduction in the boat?
So actually what we found out here very interestingly, and the team of scientists that have been working on this is my team, but also includes researchers from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the US, people who've dealt with this issue out of the coast of California, and then also another team out of the UK. So it's been a big collaboration to come to some of these kind of recommendations. And what we are saying, and what we're trying to take to the government now is, we say, look, first of all, ship strike is unlike a lot of conservation problems, it's a resolvable problem, because if we can identify where the ships are and where the whales are and where they're overlapping, we just have to figure out how to separate that overlap, right? So conservation is not always that straightforward, as we know. So this is a unique opportunity for us to actually do something, and do something positive, and have one of those, what would like to have more of these successes. So what we've found is that actually 90% of the vessel traffic that's going along the south coast of Sri Lanka is actually just transiting through our waters. So they're not coming into the ports in Sri Lanka, they're just going past via our waters, through our waters. And so what we've come up with, what our recommendation is, if they can shift the shipping lanes just in that region for those at 90% of vessels, 15 nautical miles offshore, it will have about a 90% reduction, 80 to 90% reduction in the number of whales that are killed. And also the amount of fuel that's burnt extra is actually not a lot. I mean, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's pretty minimal, right?
Yeah.
And also think about it. You make a change this year, people might get a little upset, but in 10 years' time, no one's going to remember that, it cost that little bit less to do this this trip. Anyway, so then we're thinking there's 10% of vessel traffic left that's actually coming into the ports in Sri Lanka. So what do we do with them? So one of the things is, we know we really need to do more investigations to come up with a more refined answer. But at the moment, we also are looking at things like speed restrictions. So if you look at the south coast, and there are certain areas where we know we've been seeing whales consistently over the years. And so we can then say, look, through these areas, just reduce your speed, because right now, they're moving pretty fast. And, science has shown that if vessels travel, less than 14 knots, the chance of them killing a whale on impact is reduced a tremendous amount. The faster they go, the faster, the bigger the impact, that faster the whale is going to get killed. I mean, the thing is here, so we had a blue whale that was struck and killed by a vessel in 2012. It came into our main harbor, wrapped on the bow of a container ship. And, we were lucky enough to be able to go back into some archival data. Actually, this data belongs to the Global Fishing Watch project. And they were, happy enough to help us extract some AIS data. So AIS is automatic information systems,
Right.
automated information systems. So a lot of large vessels have to have a sort of a device that pings their position constantly so they can be monitored, their movement can be monitored. So we managed to extract the information of the AIS data of the vessel that hit that whale. And we found that the vessel was traveling between 16 to 21 knots throughout its journey around Sri Lanka.
Wow.
So that's way above the speeds that we recommend if you want to not kill a whale. So that's one of the things. But the other thing I want to point out is that, Sri Lanka has just, the president of Sri Lanka, wanted us to sign this MARPOL agreement. It's a new annex related to reducing ship-based pollution to try to create healthy environments for coastal populations. And by shifting this 90% of ship traffic further offshore, we're actually going to achieve that goal as well, which I think is actually huge because, it's a double whammy. We're doing something that's going to not only protect the environment, not only protect a resource that Sri Lanka is now using, in terms of the whale watch tourism industry, but also in thinking about the health of the people of the country and constraining coastal pollution. So I think it's pretty phenomenal if we can do this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So it's amazing the work you've done surrounding this, because I know it's you talk about it and people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That does, that's an easy solution, but it's obviously not an easy solution. It's taking you, this process takes a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
One for just getting people to listen, and then others just having people understand that you're not trying to threaten the shipping industry.
Yeah.
You're trying to work with them to just avoid, collisions and so forth, which I would imagine nobody wants to hit a whale.
And
right?
that's the point, right? Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And there are added incentives. I mean, there are some ship companies, I do need to point out, that have voluntarily started moving further offshore because they have heard of this issue. And I mean, it is a positive for them because, the less whales they kill, the better reputation they get, and the more likely people are going to want to work with them. So there are these indirect benefits that we don't often talk enough about, but there are certainly, they definitely exist. And yeah, certainly, working on this issue, to start off with, because Sri Lanka, most people didn't even know we really had whales in our waters till I started working on them. It became this thing where the government almost felt like I was trying to topple the economy of the country. But so it's been this thing where we gradually had to ease them into the idea that no, actually, we're trying to protect the economy. We're trying to protect, coastal environments. We're trying to protect this resource so that sustainable tourism can happen in terms of the whale watch industry. It's about longevity. It's about really caring for what's in our oceans and around our coast. It's our obligation, and for not just for us, for future generations, for survival of everyone. And so it's important. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And what's interesting, you mentioned the sort of the whale watching industry now has boomed because now you have this whale population that everybody wants to take a look at. And you've also recently published a paper that you discovered a new species in the area. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting. So I was actually out on the water back in February doing routine surveys. I do my research around February, March because the seas are quite calm on the south coast. And, we do a lot of photo ID. So we take pictures of tail flukes and dorsal sides of whales and for documenting and putting in our databases so we can identify and re-identify individuals, use these long-term scars, markings to see who's coming to the population, how old these individuals are, and answer a range of questions. And we just so happened to be kind of out in the water, and there was this whale that was swimming around the boat. And we switched off our engine as we usually do, and we were just so lucky because this individual was just really kind of a little curious in the sense that it stayed in the vicinity. So I managed to get really great photographs of, sort of the right side jaw, the left side jaw, because it lifted its head a little bit, of its, its back. And we went back and, myself and my students who were working with me at the time, and we were back at the field house sort of sorting through the images as we do at the end of every day. And I was looking at these pictures and thinking, this whale looks really different. It's small, that's fine, because we have Bridie's whales in our waters, which are smaller baleen whales. But Bridie's whales are just black. And this individual was not just black. It had a beautiful, pattern on its back. And the lower right jaw was white, like light colored, and the lower left jaw was dark. And it was sort of like, I was like, what on earth is this? So we started, Googling and looking up and stuff. And then we found this picture of an Omiras whale, and we thought, wow, like never been documented in Sri Lanka before. Maybe this is it. But of course, because it's science and you want to make sure that whatever you put out there is verified by the scientific community. We sent the pictures off to some experts who have worked with this species in other places, and they confirmed it. And then I wrote the paper so that we could announce it properly. And so the paper was only published last month. So you can imagine I was dying to get the word out. And I was like holding it back in like this huge secret, literally a 33-foot secret. And like, I was so excited when we could tell people, and because it's super important, again, it goes back to that. We've been missing this 33-foot giant in our waters through the history of this country.
Oh, yeah.
What else are we missing,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, now I think, I feel like, just from the discovery of sort of the blue whale population, and now this whale, you're just scratching the surface. Other things, and with your work with the shipping industry, your work with the whale watching, ecotourism industry, your work with discovery, and just understanding this species. I mean, this is I know you are like a superwoman, but this is a lot for one person to take on, and recently. You've founded a nonprofit organization called Oceanswell, and which is fantastic. And that, I assume, is to build capacity within Sri Lanka and to continue collaborations around the world through Oceanswell. To I assume is to address and continue to monitor all the things that are going on in Sri Lanka or surrounding the ocean. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this is super exciting for me. I should point out, I don't know if I'm superwoman or just completely foolish. I think that's what I feel. Man,
I'm sure people call superwoman foolish at some point.
Okay, I'll take that. But I have been doing this stuff for 10 years, largely on my own. Everything from, because I the way I run is I believe in the science. I love the science. I love research. It's like a big adventure. I have a question, figure out how to get the answer. Big journey, right? But then I believe very strongly in taking what we find science and then turning it into stories so everyone can learn about them. So everyone can be excited and engaged and empowered by, this beautiful space that's the largest part of our planet. And then I also work with policy, like we were just talking about. So it's a lot of work. So I run the social media stuff. I work with big media companies. It is exhausting. And I've been, the one thing I always say is, when I die, I don't want this to end, because then it's a complete waste of my life. And to enable and to make sure that this can continue, I realize, okay, it's time now. I'm at the point where I can start to, bring more people into the fray, teach more students, train more people, get them excited, and sort of like just nurture this next generation of what I would call ocean heroes. So I'm not expecting everyone to turn into a marine biologist or a marine conservationist, but what I am hoping is that we can create this ocean conscious public, because 70% of our planet is ocean, but it's a disproportionate number of people who actually work for the ocean. And I'm not talking about extraction in terms of fisheries and stuff. I'm talking about really thinking about what's out there, protecting, looking at sustainability, looking at how it's helping us, things like that, right? So I want to create that generation, and I want to help to just inspire people to believe that it's possible. And particularly people from parts of the world that don't traditionally are not traditionally part of the conversation. And that's the thing that, I want to change culturally, because 70% of our planet is ocean, 70% of our coastlines are actually in the developing world. And there's very little representation from this part of the world at the global stage. And that's something that needs to change, because if we genuinely want to save the ocean, then we need, fierce custodians in all coastlines, just being able to step out and talk to the local people and come up with solutions alongside their communities and just really spearhead that change. And it cannot be people from one part of the world coming into the other, going into the other part of the world, doing their research and leaving. That's parachute science. That's not sustainable. That's not going to create change, and that's not going to protect the planet. We need people who are local, who are supported, certainly, who are trained and supported by the experts out there, because we don't believe we're necessarily experts. We have the talent, we need the opportunity. And so that's what Oceanswell is sort of trying to do. And through my work, because I work with media so much, I've, had the privilege of sort of like having my face out there, which means, there's a lot of people who see me and see themselves in me and have started to believe that this is something they can do. I mean, culturally, I come from a doctor, lawyer, engineer kind of culture, and that's what people expect you to do if you go to university. And being a marine biologist is just frivolous. But now people are seeing that it's a job, it's a career, it's something that is impactful. It can make change. It can take you, across the world. It can take you on these incredible adventures. And so that's my special privilege. And so, I say my superpowers are vulnerability and visibility. And I'd like to stay open and available, and also just remind people that I'm also human and I'm just like everyone else. And so Oceanswell allows me to do that, but also allows me to just bring on these incredible people who can help to sort of make this change, that create this change, from the, this small but mighty organization, like I like to call it. I wanted it to be born and bred in Sri Lanka, but I want it to have a global voice. And I want, I want us to be connected, and I want us all to work together in the end. So Oceanswell is like, right now it's like a dream come true, because it's only 3 weeks old. Of course, I every day I think about how I'm going to fund things and how I'm going to pay people, but I'm sure it'll, in due course, we'll figure all of that out. But it's definitely a dream come true.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, it's definitely necessary, right? I definitely see the need for it, especially with the way you've defined it. And then now it's going to be interesting for you, because you're really going to have to focus on I guess a little more of your time on the business aspect, and the funding, managing an organization like this. But when you talk about sort of like you definitely are an inspiration. And I don't even think it's an inspiration you're an inspiration to just people who are in developing countries, or who are in countries that don't normally get the exposure. You're definitely an inspiration to all marine biologists out there, because you lead with passion and intelligence and science, but you focus on education. And right before the interview, I just popped on the Twitter page for Oceanswell, and it's just it's just peppered with just information and entertainment at the same time, and it's really nice that you're able to couple that together. So I think the fact that you're able to reach a lot of people around the world, especially like you said, small organization but with a big impact, I think you definitely will have that impact. Now, but in areas like, I mean, social media is amazing in the fact that it allows you to have that voice, allows sort of the people who don't have access to mainstream media to have that voice. How did growing up in Sri Lanka, in a small island country, how do you expect, or what's your plan in terms of inspiring other people in other small island countries, or have you already? And do you have a connection with them as through social media or any other means?
Yeah. So I always say I never set out to be a role model. I set out to sort of I had this dream and this goal, and I'd met this population of blue whales that I knew was different and unusual, and I wanted to know more about them. And that's how my journey began. But over the years, I've realized, because in some ways I'm a very unique figure in this field. I'm from a developing country. I am female, so I represent these demographics that perhaps haven't had a very loud voice. And I'm small, but I'm pretty loud, so that's kind of funny. But as everyone knows, but as a result, and because I've engaged because I love telling the stories, because I love kind of sharing the experiences and the information. And to me, that's the most exciting part. And if someone says, what's the strongest tool in your toolkit? I will say storytelling, because that's what has changed the hearts and minds of so many people, from government officials all the way to kids, all the way to parents who are hesitant about their kids going out and following this field. So, it is such a powerful tool. And I just don't think scientists use it enough, but that's a side topic.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, for me, because of my presence out there, like I said, superpowers, visibility, and vulnerability. visibility, put myself out there, and make sure people realize I'm just like them. And so it's inspired people. And, I'm amazed the demographics, the different kinds of people who have just, fallen in love with the work, fallen in love with the adventure. And it's not just Sri Lankans. It's not just Sri Lankans I live in the city in Sri Lanka. I don't, that's not the demographic that really loves what I do. It's all the people out there who I may not cross paths with in a hurry or ever. But there are so many people who write to me and they're like, I'm so inspired by what you do, or how can I do what you do? Or like, I want to live my dream too. And that's really empowering for me as well. And it's motivating for me to keep going. But also beyond that, I mean, I have students I know India is not a small island nation, but India, from places like Indonesia, from Singapore. I have kids from all over the world. I have had children, not just from sort of the developing world kind of area or the global south, but, I've had kids there was a little girl in New Zealand who dressed up as me for, Famous People Day. And when her mom...
Are you kidding me?
I wish I was, but it was so cute because the mother wrote to me and was like, my daughter really wants to dress up as you.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
She says, what do you wear? And I was like, shorts, t-shirt, and no shoes. And I was like, it's kind of a lame costume, but go with it. And it's super cute. And there was a kid in this US who basically drew my face and like put all these facts in a cardboard and, for another like show and tell type day. I mean, this is the thing, like I never set out to reach so many people, but I am so pleased that I've been able to, because at the end of the day, I want my life to be useful and to have meaning, and I want it to help other people. And if this is going to do it, I'm so stoked. So people from all over, connect with what we do, what I do, and sort of like, are just empowered to go off into their own lives. And that's a special privilege.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you have, do you reach out and talk to other people who are from, I guess, small island nations that are doing conservation work and want to sort of follow in the same lines? Because, I mean, you've had, over the last 10 years, you've built quite the legacy already. But you also, you're very good, behind a camera and in terms of getting out and then being noticed, right? Because that's the one thing is the work that you do is you have to get noticed. And I think, like you said, the storytelling has been such a powerful tool for that. And you've been able to acquire fellowships and so forth that allow you to do more things. And then you've been able to, like the Royal Ontario Museum talk, they invited you down. So you've been able to travel the world, get more and more exposure. For people in other countries similar to yours that are trying to do the same thing, but maybe are struggling a little bit, or I'm sure a lot of people go through struggles. There's maybe not a lot of marine biologists in those countries like yours. What advice would you give them in terms of what to do, like to go forward in like the next steps? Yeah,
so I do mentor students from all over the world. I try to dedicate at least an hour or two a week to having a conversation with a student who's asking those kinds of questions. Either if they're local, they can come meet me for an hour, or if not, I give them Skype time. So, I try because I don't have the answers, but like there may be something I can contribute that will make a difference. So I don't know. I have if I think about my life, like there's lots of things. One thing is I try to remind students that it's their life. And in the end, you'll have family members and aunts and uncles or teachers or whatever tell you what you can or cannot do. But that's based on their life experience. And so sometimes you do have to listen. I think it's really important that we listen to people who are older than us, who've had more experience in life. But we need to make up our own minds in the end. So if you have a dream and you have good set goals, don't give up, but try to think through those things that you've been told and try to figure out how they can best help you to sort of get to the other side. So take risks. I certainly have taken a lot. Like people, I lived sort of part-time in other countries because they're doing different degrees, but also running my project here in Sri Lanka. And when I finally sort of left, the last place I was at was actually Santa Cruz, California. When I finally left UC Santa Cruz, I had lots of friends saying, so what are you going to do when you go home? And at that point I said, I don't actually know. And they're like, how are you going to pay yourself? And I said, I have no clue. And they were like, that seems really foolish. And I was like, but I know I have to go. And that was it. And I had always wanted to come back and work in Sri Lanka. This is hope. This is where I want to make change out of here, So take that risk. Don't be afraid. People, when I was coming home, people were like, why are you coming home? What are you going to do? And I was like, don't worry. Chill out, everybody. I can figure this out, and then you just have to just go. And, your work is going to speak for itself. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what school you went to or, who your parents are. None of that's going to matter. It's your work that's going to speak volume about your abilities and who you are. And so, work hard, be dedicated, take chances, and create your own path. Don't depend on, like I say, I don't come from an ocean-going family. I wasn't born with a scuba tank on my back. Right. I didn't have a legacy to kickstart my career. I basically created my own path, one foot in front of the other. Sometimes I stumbled and fell. Sometimes I had to go backwards a little bit because I took the wrong turn. But it didn't stop me because I knew where I wanted to go. And I'm not saying I've already reached where I want to be. There's so many more things. I think I'm young enough to achieve a hell of a lot more stuff in my lifetime before I die. And so just think about it. Take it a step at a time, but push beyond the box. Don't be afraid to apply for a fellowship because you're not going to get it. That's the very reason you should apply for it. Apply for it. If you fail, that's fine. You learned how to write a better application next time. If you get it, wow, imagine. And that's, people say, how do you have so many fellowships? And I'm like, because I just filled the forms, that's actually the answer. And challenges are the best thing that can happen in your life. When someone says you can't, or when the system blocks you, remember challenges you can climb over or walk around. There's no solid brick wall with never-ending edges, right? So just remember that those challenges are actually what are going to make you the cream of the crop, because you're going to have to start thinking, okay, this challenge is here, but I still have that dream on the other side of it, and I want to get there. How do I get there? And you start thinking outside the box. You start being innovative. You start creating things that nobody else has created. You start seeing opportunities no one else has seen. And you just have to just keep going and stay passionate. Find what you love, and there is no doubt you will do it well.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree 100% because, and that's for anybody who's getting into any industry, but especially, people who want to become marine biologists. I think, the days of finishing university and going in and getting a job or getting recruited out of university are pretty much gone because there's such high competition just to get a job. And then, of course, now each government, depending who's in charge, will either have jobs available or no jobs available, and it all depends. And you see a lot of people evolving into being innovative and coming up with their own sort of model to not only just follow their passion, but to create a living out of it. And it's not easy because you are sort of, who does this is sort of is trailblazing, and you trail, and there's going to be bumps in the road. But if you persist, it's going to continue to go. I mean, let's be honest. Like I've heard your story many times, and you may not have discovered the blue whale populations if you didn't take that risk and get on that ship where you were able to actually see these blue whales and literally, change the way you saw your waters, and now it's your primary research interest and things like that. And that was a risk you took. It wasn't an easy thing getting on that ship. And I think everybody has their own skill set. For you, you're an amazing storyteller. You're an awesome researcher. So you're able to bring those together, and that's basically created your path. And I think everybody has their own skill set. Mine was I'm able to get on a microphone and get behind a mic and actually talk about the ocean, and I love talking about it. So I'm able to do that. It's not easy, but we're both able to move forward because we persist, and I like to say I'm a little bit stubborn with the fact that I will not stop, and I'm just going to continue to go. And I think we all have that in us, and I think that's where the difference is, and I think we're going to have to find to do it. But with Oceanswell, let's get back to that. You've got, as we wrap up here, you've got a lot on your plate. So how are you going to move forward? Like, so over the next, say, 6 months or so, what's on your plate for Oceanswell? What's your major focus?
Okay, so first of all, we want to ramp up more support for Oceanswell.
Right.
I've been functioning. I've had a lot of followers on all my social media under my full name, Asha de Vos, for many, many years.
Right.
Such amazing, dedicated followers. I mean, super engaged, super excited, super supportive, and they've really given me a lot of strength to continue on this path. But now I'm switching from that to Oceanswell, this bigger platform where we can create so much more fun stuff and kind of, tell more stories. And so to start off with, we're trying to ramp the support up on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can find us at Oceanswell ORG all together. So that's the first thing. And then apart from that, we're going to have some really fun things coming up, ways that people can engage with Oceanswell, engage with some of the research we do, have fun. Because like you said, I think entertainment is a great thing and science is fun. And I think I would love more people to sort of get involved. So we're going to create some opportunities for citizen scientists, for just people sitting at their desks at home to get involved. And then apart from that, I'm hoping to create in the next couple of years, marine conservation course online for starting off with Sri Lankans, because it's not something that's actually available here.
Okay.
And I want to give the opportunity to students throughout the island, not just kids in the city, but, all around our coastlines to kind of learn a bit more, engage in the subject, and sort of get involved in, and it's sort of what I hope is going to be an innovative classroom. So you stay tuned for that. Yeah. And so that's the stuff that we're kind of ramping up right now. And then also, in the next, within the next month, I'm going to start something that I'd like to call Marine Conservation Conversations. And it's an informal, just a group. And if you have interest in marine conservation, people can come join. Right now, we're looking at a physical space, but in time, I'd love to make it something that also people can join in from a Google Hangout or something. Yeah. But where we, we take science as a backbone, and we have a discussion, and from there, we organically start discussing what can be done, locally, how we can resolve some of the problems we're seeing at a global stage. So, it'll be steeped in science, because that's really important to me as a scientist. And then sort of engage and create these conversations, because I think we need more communities that are talking about the ocean. And my ultimate dream is that everyone in the world speaks about the ocean at least once a day. And that is my ultimate dream. And that's what Oceanswell is sort of going towards. As huge and as crazy as that dream is, that's where I want to be before I die. So I can't die too soon.
A lot of work to be done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I'm really happy for you, and I'm glad that you're starting this. I'm very excited, and I'd love to extend any kind of help that we can do here at Speak Up for Blue, because we have a very similar mission in terms of what we do. So, we'll probably do hopefully some collaboration in the future to help get Oceanswell off. And what I'll do for the audience is I will put all the links in the show notes for all the social media channels that you just mentioned earlier, so that people do it. And you don't have a website up yet, but it's going to come, I assume, right? Is that
yes? It's being built, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be exciting. So stay tuned. We don't want to reveal everything at once, guys.
Of course, it's a process, right? But once that's done, we'll be sharing that as well. Asha, I just want to say thank you very much for being on this episode and sharing this, and I wish you much and a lot of success with Oceanswell and the rest of your work, and of course I'd love to extend the invitation for you to come back on and talk about the work that you're doing at Oceanswell, so we can get an update and how well it's going and so forth.
Sure, I'd love that. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me on. I do love the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I love that you reach out to so many interesting people in this field that I may not get to meet otherwise, but I get to listen to what their dreams are and listen to their passion and get inspired. So you make it really easy for people to access these otherwise maybe inaccessible people. And I love that. So thank you so much for doing it.
You bet. I very much appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon, and good luck with Oceanswell.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you to Asha for coming on the program. Now, this is one of those things. She's in Sri Lanka. I'm in Burlington, Ontario, in Canada, and it was a 9.5 hour difference in time, and she was able to accommodate that I was interviewing her at 6:30 in the morning. She was interviewing later in the evening after her day, which is always packed with science and information and education and media, PR, and whatnot. And what she does on a daily basis is amazing. She's a superhero. She really is, and she loves what she does, and it shows. You can hear it. I mean, you heard it in her interview. You heard her passion, and that's what I love about all our guests. They all have passion in some sort of way for the ocean, and I know the audience, for you guys listening to this, you guys pick that up. I hope it's an inspiration for you. It's an inspiration for me, and I hope it helps you drive, because I know you guys have the same type of passion, right? You just show it in different ways. You might not be a scientist, you might not be involved in conservation right away, but you want to get involved in these. I find these interviews help to find out where you can get involved, and so forth. So all of the links to the social media for Oceanswell will be in the show notes. So take a look at the show notes either in your app or on the website, and speakupforblue.com/blog. It should be right there. And you will be able to figure out how to get a hold and how to get in touch with Asha and Oceanswell and follow them. And we'll keep an eye out on them as well. We'll get updates every once in a while. We'll have Asha on again. Because she's so great. She's awesome. And she's a friend of mine, so it's always fun to connect with her. So that's the show for today. I really appreciate you guys listening. Again, if you have any questions about the show, any other episode that we put together, you want us to cover a certain topic, or you want to just hang out in the group and chat with all our other members, fellow conservationists, scientists, and so forth, you can do so by going to speakupforblue.com/group. Join with your Facebook account. I'll make sure you're not a spammer, let you in. There might be a couple of questions that I'm going to answer where I've got a new feature in the group, which is kind of cool, a new tool. And if you want to contribute to our campaign where we help citizen scientists get in touch with programs for citizen science, you can do so by going to speakupforblue.com/Patreon, Patreon. Could be a monthly contributor to that. Remember, it is a monthly contribution. And you get to mold the program because we're developing it right now. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much for listening. You have been listening to the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Happy Wednesday and happy conservation.